Hi there, Buick owners. Today on your 2020 Buick Envision, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Demco's Air Force One supplemental braking system. There's 5 main components you'll need when flat towing your Envision behind your motorhome. You'll need your tow bar, which is the connection between your motorhome and your vehicle, your safety cables, which is a supplemental connection in addition to your tow bar. You'll need your diode wiring, which takes all the lighting signals from your motorhome and transfers them to the lights at the back of your vehicle so people behind you know your intentions when going down the road. And you'll also need your base plate, which is the connection point on your vehicle that you'll attach your tow bar and safety cables to. And lastly, you'll need your supplemental braking system, which will apply the brakes in your vehicle when you hit the brakes in your motorhome. Our Air Force One is specifically designed to work with air brakes on your motorhome and is my personal recommended braking system of choice if you do have air brakes. It's a truly proportional system, so the harder you hit your brakes in the motorhome, the harder the pedal is going to be applied in the vehicle behind you. This is also my desired system because if you use your Jake brake when going down a hill, it's unlike other systems that use your diode wiring to determine if the brake is being applied, which could damage the vehicle down long hills. You're not going to get that with this system because it is specifically designed for those applications on your motorhome. This kit's going to include both the components you'll need, both the vehicle and motorhome side. You can see here at the back of our motorhome, we've got our connection point for the air fitting, which this comes included, the coily cable here, which goes over here to our vehicle to the other port, connecting the air from our motorhome to the air on our vehicle here, which is going to then apply the brakes when you press the pedal. You can see here when I hit the brake in the motorhome, it's going to apply in our vehicle. There's also a breakaway switch that comes included with your kit, and in the event of a catastrophic disconnect, the breakaway cable will pull the pin. When it pulls this pin, it will apply the pedal inside at maximum pressure, similarly to if you were to slam down on the pedal in your motorhome. One thing you'll notice here, if we look at the back side of the mirror in our vehicle, is that once we pull this pin, or anytime you hit the brakes and the brake pedal is applied, there's an indicator that will illuminate on the back side of that mirror. So this way, when you're driving down the road, you can use your rear view camera to ensure that your braking system is working properly. The operating unit here we installed underneath the hood. This is really what does all the magic. It monitors that air coming from the motorhome and applies it to the pedal as necessary. It's also tapped into the brake vacuum system, so that way it draws a vacuum, so you've got power brake assist as well. There's also components we have installed on the motorhome. We'll take a look at those. The air tank here on our motorhome is part of our system as well, and this is going to ensure that we've got ample air pressure and supply when we need it. There are 3 lines here. We've got our supply line from our motorhome, we've got our metered air connection for the brakes, and then we've got the output that goes to the fitting at the back. This is a little bit more intimidating of an install compared to a portable system, which just simply sits in the floor, but this is really my top pick if you've got air brakes, because once you've got it installed, you just hook your components up here and then it's ready to go. You don't have to do anything else. With those portable styles, every time you want to flat tow, you've got to set that thing up, get it in there, get it positioned properly, but not with this guy. It just couldn't be easier. So if you follow along with me, I'll show you how to get it installed. It's really not as intimidating as it sounds. It does look like a lot of parts when you pull it out of the box, but it goes together relatively quickly. We'll begin our installation by mounting all the major components. Our operating unit we mounted here right on top of our fuse box cover. To do this, we just set the cover right here on top, and the 4 holes here for our operating unit, we just marked those on the top of the cover, and then we removed the cover, drilled holes through that, and then just secured it with zip ties going through those holes. I did take some silicone as well and squirted it in there just to seal those holes back up. You can get silicone here at eTrailer.com if you need some. The fitting for the front here is going to be the male fitting, so it's a little bit smaller. It's got the smaller cap on it. And we actually just attached this to the bracket for our electrical connector here. There's a small bracket that comes included with your braking system, and you can use that here. And we just use some self-tapping screws to just run that down to attach it to this bracket. On the other side of our electrical connector, we have our breakaway switch, which mounts directly to the tab that is included on our base plate. Our base plate provided the mounting location for this. So we just use the included bolt, washer, and nut to attach it to that mounting location. We then mounted our operating cylinder here and attached it to the pedal. This is fairly simple to attach it. The bracket here, just remove the bracket by removing the nuts, and then slide your cylinder over your pedal, put the bracket back on, and then re-secure the nuts. You want to make sure you don't over tighten these, so when I tighten these down, I actually just use a socket in my hand, and I just get it as tight as I can with the socket using my hands. That's going to keep it plenty secure. You can see here there's no way this guy's coming off of there. Coming out of the back of our cylinder, we have our cable here with our anchor, and we need this to be a straight line coming out. So this is a bracket that does come included with your kit. We slid it over the stud here, and we did it to provide our own nut to secure it to that stud. And then we use a self-tapping screw to secure it to the firewall here. And the remaining hole extends out a little bit. And this extends out so we can get this nice straight line. And then we just attach the anchor to that remaining hole that's pre-drilled in the bracket using a nut and bolt. We did have to provide the nut and bolt to secure that. Once you've got that secured, we want to take all the slack out of this. You do want just a little bit when you're done, so you can see here if we pull this, we've got just a little bit of play here still in our cylinder, and that's what you want to see when you're removing that slack, just a tiny little bit so we know there's no pressure pulling on our pedal. Once you've got that slack pulled out, you can see it loops around here, and then we use a 5/32 Allen key to secure that down. When tightening this down, you want to make sure you don't over tighten it because it can pinch the cable and cause it to break. In most cases, I found if you tighten the little set screw here until it's flush with the anchor top, that gets you plenty snug without damaging the cable. Lastly, we're going to mount our LED indicator on the back side of our mirror. It just uses some double-sided tape that's pre-attached to it, so just pull off the adhesive backing and stick it in place. You want to make sure you avoid any sensors on the back side of the mirror. You can see this little opening here where we had a sensor here, so we don't want to cover those up. Make sure it's just smooth plastic you're attaching it to. The wire then can just be pushed up into the headliner, just poke your finger up in there, and you can do this all the way around. Once we get down here to the end, we're just going to poke it into the seam here at the A pillar. Once you've got it poked around there, the weather stripping here you can just peel back, and we just slide our finger down, pushing the wire all the way down behind it until it comes out down here. Once we came out down here, we just pushed our wiring back along this top edge until it hangs out down here at the bottom. We've actually got it tucked back in behind there. There's our black wire that comes from the LED indicator right here. Your LED indicator has two wires on it, this red and this black. And these two we can then start connecting to the reed switch. The reed switch comes off of the cylinder. It's located right here. If it's not pre-installed, it just slides in and there's a little set screw you tighten down to secure it in here. We routed the reed switch's wire right over here. It's not very long, so it only goes over to about here. The reed switch has three wires on it, a blue, a black, and a brown. The blue wire is your ground wire, so we use this tri-connector here to connect the blue wire to the black wire from the LED, and then we use some of the black wire that comes included to the kit to run it to ground, which we just use a self-tapping screw and a ring terminal right here to get our ground. The black wire coming from the reed switch attaches to the red wire coming from your LED indicator. And then the brown wire from the reed switch needs to go to battery power. You'll get a brown wire with your kit that we can route out to our engine compartment where we're going to connect it to the battery. So now that we're at the point where we need to get our brown wire out, we need to also get our airline hose out so it can connect to the operating unit that we mounted under the hood. This airline is a great tool for getting wiring routed as well. Our airline just pokes right into this. It's a quick connect fitting, so you just poke it in. And then the rest of it, we kind of went up above this panel. It does go across the top of this panel. And we removed the side panel here so we could easily see it. And our grommet that goes outside is going to be located just through the opening there. The grommet that comes out through the firewall is located underneath the cowl here where our wiper blades are. To pull this cowl up, there's two pins, one located here and here. We just removed these two pins and we pulled it up. Now there are more pins that run all the way down. You can remove the entire panel if you want, but if you just take these two out, you should be able to get your hand in there to be able to work. We then used a long drill bit and drilled a hole through the grommet right there, and then passed our airline tubing through that. Once you pass your airline tubing through, you can use your airline tubing as a fish wire, and we taped our brown wire that comes in our kit to our airline tubing and use that to pull the wire through. Once you've got those pulled through, the airline tubing, we're going to cut off the excess and poke it right into the quick connect fitting on our operating unit labeled air out, because this is sending air out to our cylinder to activate it. When you're cutting your airline tubing, you do want to make sure you're using the appropriate tool. You don't want to use just regular wire cutters or side cutters, because that's going to smash it and give you a deformed end. We want a nice, clean, square cut like this. You can get tubing cutters here at eTrailer.com. We've got a nice smaller pair that's not as big and heavy duty as these, but they still use the same concept of a nice sharp razor with a flat surface. And we want to make sure you cut it perpendicular to the line, and that'll give you that nice clean cut that's not going to leak when you poke it into those quick connects. We can then take the rest of the airline tubing that we've got, and we're going to poke it into the air in, and then we're going to route this line. We just go down alongside the battery. We go down underneath the headlight. There's an opening here. And we did this while we had the fascia off doing our base plate, so it was much easier. And we routed that line across the base plate and then attached it right into the quick connect fitting here at the back of our valve here at the front. The brown wire that we routed from our reed switch then comes in, and we need to connect this to power everything up. So we route that over here along the battery. We do route it down similar to how we routed our hose, and we came over here. Here we have our breakaway switch wires. We routed those wires pretty much in reverse order of how we routed the vacuum line up to this location. They're only about this long, so they're only going to reach to about here. Your breakaway switch wires are going to be the orange wire as well as a black wire. The orange wire needs to get power, so we took the brown wire that we had routed over here. We stripped back both the brown and the orange, and we connected those to the same heat shrink butt connector. On the other side of that heat shrink butt connector, we attached our fuse harness, which goes to our battery. And we can just pull this cover up here, and it'll just flip up. Once you undo the little clips here, and you can see the other end of our wire, we attached it to a ring terminal and then secured it right to the nut here. Just remove the nut with your 13mm socket, slide your ring terminal on, and then re-secure it. You can then fold it over, and it should fit in the little groove here, allowing it to pass out with the existing factory wire. Our fuse is not installed yet, and you want to make sure you don't install your fuse until you've completed your installation so you don't accidentally short anything out. The other wire coming off of our breakaway switch, the black wire here, will connect to one of the black wires coming off of our operating unit. You have two wires here coming off the operating unit. They're both black, so it doesn't matter which one connects to that breakaway switch wire. So just choose one of these two black wires here and connect that. We again used a heat shrink butt connector instead of the ones that come in the kit because it is outside the vehicle, and that'll ensure that no moisture enters in there. The other black wire coming off of our operating unit connects to ground, and we just connected that with a ring terminal right here to this ground stud. This way, whenever the breakaway switch pin is pulled, it powers up one wire, the other one's grounded, which operates our unit to apply the brake pedal. You also have a vacuum port on your operating unit, and this is going to draw vacuum on your power brake booster system, so that way it has power assist when applying the pedal. Coming off of the port where it says vacuum, we cut a small piece of the vacuum line that comes in our kit, and then we put a check valve in it. The black side of the check valve faces towards the operating unit. We then took a long piece of our vacuum line that comes in our kit, and we routed it over towards our vacuum line coming off the brake vacuum booster, which is over here. And we routed that just to the other side of our master cylinder reservoir here. And our vacuum line from our brake booster is right here, the factory line. It's also right here. So what we did to get this connected is the vacuum line kind of comes off and it curves around, and it makes a 90-degree turn right in this location to connect here to the vehicle. We cut right here and right here to cut that 90-degree out. So we could use the T-fitting that we have, and we use the 90-degree T's to reattach those lines back together. This is the 3/8 vacuum line that comes in your kit. The adapters do come included with your kit that go from 3/8 to 1/2 inch, so we can connect to our factory line. Unfortunately, the 1/2 inch vacuum line doesn't come included. You can get some 1/2 inch hose though at your local automotive store. And you just need a small section of it so that way you can cut them out to make those adapter ends to make your connection. We did put a hose clamp on it, which comes included with our kit to secure it to that factory vacuum line. On the other end of our T here, before we went to the adapter on this one, which goes towards our engine here, we did put another check valve with the black part of the check valve facing towards the engine. So the rest of this line that goes on this direction. The other side of our T went over to the operating unit over there. That'll complete our installation for the vehicle side of our Air Force One. Next, we'll need to head over to our motorhome to complete that side. The motorhome side of your braking system, we're going to mount our main components first so we know where to route all our hoses to. We're going to mount the tank, and you want to mount it fairly close to your rear axle if you can to help minimize the length of hose that you're going to need. This compartment that we're in right here is just behind the rear axle on our passenger side, and we mounted it in this compartment because there's already holes here in the back where we can easily pass our hoses in and out of, so we can get in and out of this compartment easily, and this is going to keep our tank protected against the elements. It does come with included hardware, so we just drilled through the wall and used the included hardware to attach it. There's a washer on each side with a locking nut on the opposite side of the bolt to hold it in place. You'll also need to mount the female fitting on the back side of your motorhome here, because this is where we're going to hook up to get our air supply from the motorhome to our vehicle to operate the brakes. We just use self-tapping screws to run it right into the hitch. These things are going to vary in the location depending on your motorhome. We're now underneath the motorhome, and we need to tap into both the supply line and the metered air line. Before you tap into your supply line and your metered air line, you do want to determine the appropriate lines, and before you determine those lines, it's usually best to deplete all the air out of the system so you can disconnect the line to determine which one it is. To deplete your air, you can just pump your brakes over and over again while the motorhome is off, and eventually that will drain out all the air. Then you can pull off the suspected line that you suspect to be your supply line and start your motorhome. The compressor will kick on and air will then be shooting out of this line if you have the supply line. Typically it's a very thick line, usually green in color, just like you see up there. This is a 5/8 diameter line. So we already tested and determined it was that one. We then used our hose cutters to cut the large green line and placed our T in between the two. Now we've got that one hooked up. Next we're going to do our metered airs over here. Our metered air is the black line coming off here. And the way you would test this, before you would tap into the supply line, you'll plug your supply line back up, and then you'll have an assistant run the motorhome, and it should be able to build pressure with the meter disconnected. Once you've got pressure built up, your assistant can then press the brakes, and air pressure should then shoot out of the metered line whenever they press the brakes. Once you've determined the appropriate line, that is your metered line, then you're going to do the same thing. We're just going to cut this with our hose cutters, and we're going to put the smaller 3/8 T fitting in line between those. From there, we're going to take the 1/4" line that comes in our kit, and we're going to run it from these T fittings towards our tank. The routing is going to vary depending on your motorhome. You just want to make sure you avoid any moving components, such as your suspension components, and anything excessively hot like your exhaust. We routed ours down the frame rail following any factory lines that were already there. We routed our lines back to the tank. The supply line, which is the one that came off of the green hose, the larger line, will go right here. And there's this little arrow showing that air is going to be going into this fitting. So this is from our supply that we had tapped into. The metered line that we tapped into is going to go here to this fitting here. So we just route it from that metered fitting that we teed into there to here. And then the last hose, this one coming off the top here, this little 90-degree fitting, this is the output that's going to go to the fitting that we had at the back. These are all quick connect fittings, so the 1/4" line just pokes right in. And that completes our installation of Demco's Air Force One supplemental braking system on our 2020 Buick Envision.